in our entire community, every single person in that community, it'd never been done before. No one had ever married outside their culture, and everybody there had basically married their cousin.
Yeah, there you go. The safe option. Hey, this is Habib Ahmed. You're listening to Pakcord, a global Pakistani podcast. Each episode, I interview different guests from all over the world, and we all have one thing in common: Pakistan. Either we were born in Pakistan or we are of Pakistani descent. Today's story is another love story from Canada. It seems like a popular country for love. Our guests are Sana and Will Saleh. Sana is of Pakistani background, but she was born in Canada. Her husband Will is a born and raised Canadian and a convert, or rather a revert, to Islam. So in today's episode, Will and Sana share the story of how they met each other and how Will decided to convert from atheism to Islam. And they answer many frequently asked questions along the way. Sana and Will have a strong following on TikTok and also make videos on YouTube. They have decided to use their story to inspire and help other people and create original content from their angle. Before we dive into the stories, Sana and Will share a little bit about themselves.
Okay, so my name's Sana Saleh. My name used to be Sana Mohammed, and that was what I went by before I got married, and before he changed his name. So how old am I, 28?
It's around there.
Yeah. I'm 28 years old now. I was actually born and raised in British Columbia, Canada. And I've been to Pakistan multiple times. My entire family from both sides, my mother's side and my father's side, they're all in Pakistan. Literally, we're like the only odd ducklings that are outside of Pakistan. Me and my siblings were all born in British Columbia. And then we actually just moved to the Toronto area here in Ontario only last year. So we're quite new where we live now. And also, I guess I should talk about my background. So I went to school for social work. I have a bachelor's of social work. And then I got married and we had kids pretty much a year after we got married. And ever since that time, I've just been a business owner. I haven't gone back to the corporate world. I want to stay home with my babies. So I've been working from home ever since. And I guess my husband can share a little bit of his story now.
Yeah. My story, briefly, I guess. Yeah. So I grew up in British Columbia as well. That's where we met and got married. And obviously I'm a revert to Islam. So that kind of came about when I was about 23. And then after that, I went to Pakistan for Bangladesh and Pakistan for a few months and got to experience the culture firsthand, which was pretty amazing. This was, I think, right before we got married, actually, which is pretty interesting. So I got to see, I've actually seen more of Pakistan than she has.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. I've been there for longer extended periods of time. But I'm an aircraft maintenance engineer by trade. And then, we kind of moved out to Toronto for work, and we've been here ever since.
And then Will, just to make sure that I'm doing it right, do you go by Will or William or some other name?
Well,
all the above.
That's the funny story. He's got literally a million different names.
Yeah. My first name, originally is William, and then I changed my name. But I changed my name. I didn't really have a choice. So I spent some time with a Jamaat group from South Africa when I was first became Muslim. And the old guy, he was a 65-year-old doctor, and my friend introduced me to the Jamaat. He looked at me and he said, "Nope." He said, "I don't see a William. He said, I just see a Muhammad." So everyone just called me Muhammad William after that. And it stuck. And we traveled across the country and then through Pakistan and Bangladesh and all over the place in Malaysia. And so everybody's always known me as Muhammad William. So then I changed my name legally after we got married to Muhammad William Saleh. But I mean, still, it's like Pakistanis as well, right? Or a lot of people in the Muslim world that, for the most part, everyone's name is Muhammad, their first name, but so that's why they go by their second name. So I kind of fall into that too. So I tend to just go by Will normally. And then if I really want to confuse people, especially like white people, I tell them that my name is Muhammad, and then things just go crazy.
Yeah.
I see the reactions.
Yeah, exactly. So Will is fine.
Awesome. Yeah, so day to day you go by Will. At this point, I ask Will and Sana to start sharing their story. And for that, we go back to 2009.
For sure. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was actually in high school at that time.
It actually... it started, I moved to the town which she lived in kind of by chance. I was working at a fishing resort, and I came back home, and I just decided to move out from where my parents were. And so I moved into the town where we were from. I was just looking for a job at the time. I think I was like 21 or 22 or something. So I looked around and I just came across the Future Shop. If you remember Future Shop, if you guys had Future Shop in the States, but
it's like an electronics store.
It's Best Buy now, but
I see.
So I just thought, okay, I'll just apply here, and they hired me right away, and that's when I met her. I guess kind of interestingly enough, I saw her, and then we didn't speak for 3 months, and then I got laid off and I got hired back right away, and then that's when we finally met. Kind of a one-on-one conversation, which was kind of the interesting.
I think I had just returned back from Pakistan, actually. Like, I'm pretty sure that was like right when I got back from Pakistan. Yeah, so I had just got back from Pakistan. This is like the funniest story. We always tell people this. So we have a lunchroom where we used to work, and I was sitting and eating lunch, and I was sitting watching TV, and I was watching Russell Peters. I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And he was cracking some jokes. I don't know if they're racist jokes or whatever.
They were brown jokes.
They were brown jokes. And of course I started laughing. And there's always other people in the lunchroom, and I guess he was there. I honestly never even knew who he was, to be honest. I had no idea who you were.
Okay.
And he started laughing too. And I still remember to this day, he's like, I wasn't sure if I should laugh because you were brown. And
yeah, it was one of those like,
awkward moments.
You don't know if you should laugh. Is it politically correct to laugh? Or, and luckily she started laughing. So then I felt it was okay to kind of express how I felt about it.
What year was this, by the way? Was this like 2012 or?
2009.
2009, yeah.
2009, even earlier. Okay.
And I surprisingly enough, I was actually the first Muslim he had ever met. So he had a million questions. So to give a little bit of background on his story, he grew up with no religion, like absolutely no religion. Although he had explored different religions, like nothing really made sense to him. So when he realized that I was the first Muslim he had ever met, he asked me like 100 questions. and at that time, like I was young too. I was just about to graduate high school. I couldn't really answer many of those questions. So I got him in touch with basically my dad. And from there, like we were in a really tiny little community. So I'm sure you know what Jamaats are. Jamaats would come and go. And that's kind of when he just all of a sudden just got connected with all those people.
Yeah. Yeah, there was definitely different things and events, but that's it. That's kind of how we met. Was we met through working at the same place, and then through my interests. And obviously, I might have been, I might have thought she was cute, but so that's kind of how it started, right? But I felt fascinated, that, and I told her, I think straight up, that the only perception I had of Muslims, and this is to be quite honest, was like 9/11, was planes flying into buildings, and that was the only exposure that I ever had to
about
Islam.
What a Muslim is, yeah.
And of course, at the time, it was nothing but that, like on the news, it's all you saw. There was nothing about good Muslims or the rest of the 2 billion people who actually practice Islam.
And that's when he kind of was like, so you don't drink? I was like, no. So you don't party? No. You've never smoked? No. Like, you don't go out anywhere? No. Like, it was very like, he was like fascinated because
you do fun.
yeah, he's
exactly,
like, what are you?
Right.
Do you live under a rock? I'm like, basically, yeah. But like, he didn't, like, it was foreign to him because he'd never been around that. He was always around the opposite. And I think that's kind of what intrigued him, was kind of like, this is different. And then from there, things, I went to university, I went to college, I finished my degree. And at that time, he kind of immersed himself. Well, no, he became Muslim first, obviously. And then he became Muslim after he met one of those Jamaats that I was mentioning.
So up until this point, by the way, Sana, were your parents aware of anything about him, or had they heard about him or anything? Did you bring him up?
Yeah, because I actually got him in touch with my dad, like pretty much right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that awkward at all when you got him in touch with your dad? I remember you telling this story.
Yeah, it was so awkward, very awkward.
And this was just for the purpose of introducing him to Islam. Is that right?
Yeah, introducing him to Islam, and at that time I kind of had started to have an interest, but I mean, it wasn't like, oh, hey, I want to marry him. Like, it was just like here, you talk to him, see how you like him. My dad's very much the opposite of my mom. Still is. He's a lot more open than my mom was. He was kind of like, if he's Muslim, if this boy's Muslim, then I'm happy. But my mom was like very much like, he's got to be Pakistani. Like, if he's not brown, it's not happening. So anyway, but at that time, my dad kind of built this, like, I guess, secretive relationship with my husband. And
it was.
How's that experience for you?
I think awkward for sure, especially when once you come in and spend all that time, he took, and he's the one that kind of took me under his wing and would, to go for prayer or to try to give me books and prayer mats, and he was so happy that. And again, in our community, there's
maybe, like no white Muslims.
Well, there's maybe like 20 families.
It was only Pakistanis where we lived.
Yeah, and they're all Pakistani. So it's like this, like it was like
awkward,
a token white guy,
one-off unicorn white guy.
You stood out.
Oh yeah. So it was interesting, but yeah, it was definitely a little bit awkward. But yeah, he didn't care. Like he's one of those type that just sees right past any type of culture or color or whatever, which is funny because I always thought it would kind of be the complete opposite.
Nice. Okay.
And then he became Muslim, and then after he became Muslim, that's when we were like, like, okay, so now you're Muslim, like you're learning, and that's kind of when we were like, let's introduce this to my parents.
Just to pause there, by the way, Will, was there a specific moment where you decided? I mean, so you were going to the masjid, right? Maybe you still hadn't fully decided yet. I'm not sure entirely what you were going through. Was there a specific moment that really stuck out to you where you said, okay, I am a Muslim, I want to take the Shahada?
Yeah, there definitely was. So that happened. That was in the summer of 2009, and it was almost surreal. So a Jamaat they were from England and Ireland, I believe, and they had come, and her dad, I think your brother-in-laws were here as well, or there.
Yeah.
So it was really even more awkward. So it's like her dad and her two brother-in-laws came to pick me up to take me to meet this Jamaat, because it was kind of a big deal that these foreign people come and in such a small town. And they were staying at a farmhouse. One of the brothers has a nice farm there. So it was this beautiful summer kind of evening. And I met the guys, and we talked a little bit. And honestly, it was one of those moments where it's like the call to prayer happened. And for me, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was, but I teared up and I started to kind of cry a little bit. And it was just something about it that touched my heart. And then I watched them pray. And I was watching, there was a brother, he was like African black, and then you had the Pakistanis, and you had the light-skinned people, and all these different cultures all mixed together. But everyone praying the same way, following the imam, who was like a 19-year-old, he was just a kid, he was a hafiz. And for me, it was like that moment of my whole life, I always kind of yearned for that unity, where there wasn't, it didn't matter who you were, it didn't matter what your background was, it didn't matter anything, but except for this common denominator, which was the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think it was one of the brothers, he told me, he said, or maybe it was something that I had read or listened to before, but it was, that even if you don't understand, just believe, and that Allah will make everything easy for you once you kind of accept it into your heart. And so that night I took my shahada, and so I took my shahada in front of her dad, her two brother-in-laws, and like 30 other people sitting there like staring at me. It was like,
and I didn't even know that was going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was going to happen.
Yeah, I remember being like, what? You became Muslim? Like that's I did not expect that, because he was one of those hard rocks that was kind of like, well, what about this? Well, why does this happen? Why would God do this? And it was like, very tough questions where I couldn't answer. And that's why I kind of directed him to the people that could. But I never in a million years would have expected that to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I see. So then you accepted Islam. So you guys met in 2009, I think, right? You also accepted Islam in 2009.
Yeah, it was probably like 8 months later or after we met, something, 8 or 9 months. We met in the very beginning of 2009.
2009.
And then
like
towards the end of the summer is when I took my shahada.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So then what happened? So you had accepted Islam. Then did you get a chance to meet Sana's family at that point in time?
No.
No, just her dad and her brother-in-laws for that really awkward time and giving the shahada. But I don't really meet
my mom for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
It was.
So what happened in between though? So after you took the Shahada and everything, I'm assuming you guys didn't see each other for several years in between, right?
Yeah. I mean, we worked together, so it was we saw each other. Yeah.
I only worked until the end of 2009.
Yeah.
And then I was gone.
And then she went to school to do her thing. And with myself, I kind of just, I'm one of those people who, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it kind of all out. Like I don't, I don't just kind of sit and be like, okay, I'm a Muslim, that's good enough for me now. So I spent a lot of time trying to learn the religion. And again, we didn't have an imam. Our masjid, I think, was only
we didn't even have a masjid.
Yeah, at that time. It was being built. It was under construction.
You built it. You helped
part
build
of it. Yeah. So there was really no kind of religious influence that we didn't have, like, and we didn't have any mom there or anything. So I spent a lot of time, and one of the brothers who lived close that was actually there when I took my shahada, he kind of took me under his wing. And he's one of like the Tablighi Jamaat guys, you know, very conservative, very very conservative,
like complete opposite of us.
Yeah. So, but for me, it was great because I got to spend a lot of time really understanding that the really conservative side of Islam, and it might have been, I think it did cause a lot of problems for me in the beginning, just because, I mean, as we all know, that Islam is all about the middle ground. It's about like, it's not about the being so liberal or being so conservative. It's about having that balance in our life. But it really helped me to kind of be strong when I needed it in the beginning. And then, so I think that from that time, I spent, 40 days with the Jamaat from South Africa. I mentioned before, we crossed Canada, and that was unbelievable and amazing experience for me. And it was kind of at that point, I was working on the oil rigs at that time, and I just decided, I went with these guys, and it really changed my outlook, because we had like a 65-year-old doctor and a 65-year-old scholar in the Jamaat, and then I had a brother that was around my age, and then like the rest of them were just kind of like younger, like fresh out of high school kind of guys, and just to see kind of their devotion that they had to their faith, it really kind of opened my eyes. And I think later that year is when I went for 4 months to Bangladesh and Pakistan. That was, again, a huge eye opener for me to be able to, because I'm not a cultured person at all. I'm just like as typical white Western kid as you could possibly imagine. So to go to Bangladesh and then Pakistan for 4 months, it was like a huge culture shock for me.
That's intense.
And
I hadn't even lived in that capacity that he went, because whenever I would go to Pakistan, I would just go literally to my family's house, and that's it. And it would be for like 2 or 3 weeks, and that's it.
And I think that's how it is for most of us too. Even for me, it's the same story. So I go to Pakistan. Whenever I've gone to Pakistan, I just spent time with family and never actually got a chance to explore the country. I say I want to do it, but then when you go there, you have like 1,000 family members who want to see you.
Yeah, that's so true. You got to visit everybody. You got to go to everybody's house for dinner. You got to go here. You got to go there. It's always just family. Yeah.
And then even for us, sometimes oftentimes me or my cousins, when we go back to Pakistan, it can be a culture shock even for us. So I can only imagine how it was for you, because you grew up most of your life over here.
Yeah, all of my life, every bit of it, all of your life. Yeah, the 25 years.
I don't even think you'd left the country prior to that.
No. No, my first trip out of the country was to Bangladesh and Pakistan. I went to like the next province over once. That was pretty much it. So.
What did you do during your time there, by the way? What did you do in Pakistan?
We went to Rawalpindi, to the markas they have there, their headquarters, and then they sent us out. So we would go out for maybe a week at a time to different localities. So we went right from like Hyderabad in the south, like all the way up to Barako in the north, and then like Jung and Sargodha and these different places. And that was what I really loved about it, was that I got to kind of work on my own faith and build kind of my own understanding of Islam, and then have such a cool mix of people along the way, because it wasn't just the Pakistanis that we were with, but we would have the locals in the Jamaat, and then we would have people from, we went, one Jamaat, I called it the United Nations Jamaat, because it was like England, Italy, Sweden, like all Australia, Germany, all these different people from all over. Our first trip to Hyderabad, we went from Lahore to Hyderabad on a train, and I think it was like a 15 or 16 hour train ride, and it's the trains that kind of you imagine like in Pakistan. So they said, okay, well, because you're from Canada, and you guys, myself and the brother that I was with, they said, well, you guys can take like the Daewoo bus, the nice kind of thing, and the rest of us, because we can't afford it, we'll just take the train. So I said no. I said, you guys go, I'm going where you guys go. So we all went on the train together, and it was like there was no electricity on the train. The windows didn't close properly. It was full of dust. It was the most rickety thing, and it was just like this unbelievable.
I've never even been in one.
Unbelievable journey, and then kind of along the way, it really, at least for myself, when I came to Bangladesh, I had like this big military backpack with like medical kits and all this stuff. And by the time like I left, I was going out for like a week or two at a time, and I had like a little laptop bag, and that's everything I needed I had in it, just like 2 chadars and like nothing basically, right? So it really kind of showed me that you really don't need a lot to kind of get by. But yeah, just the people and honestly, like when I was in Hyderabad, they found out that my favorite food were like French fries. So we would spend maybe like a night or two in each little masjid, and then we would kind of just bounce around. So we have like the local kids that they would know where we're going and they would stick with us. We had this little gang that followed us. But everywhere we went, like everybody's mom would send French fries, their own take on French fries for me to come to the masjid.
Like a desi twist on French fries, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Added chaat masala to it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so sweet.
To have that love, and I think honestly, like Pakistan has quite a bad reputation. Not that it itself has the reputation, but it kind of has this, like, people look at Pakistan as like, oh, it's a dangerous place, or oh, it's this or it's that. But I mean, like my time there, I felt so loved and like accepted, and it's complete opposite of what a lot of people perceive it to be here in the West. So I think that,
That's awesome. Yeah, amazing story. So during this time that Will was strengthening his religion, Sana was studying at university. Then they were going to reconnect. Turns out the way they would reconnect would be via a middleman.
So the brother that I went with to Pakistan, he was the one who was with us when I took the Shahada. He was actually the one who called the adhan that made me cry. But it turns out he was actually like a family friend of Sana's, of her parents.
Very, very good family friend.
So when I went with him, I mean, we became like family. Like he was like my father. So when we kind of talked along the way and about, like getting married, and because he's that very conservative guy that's like, well, you're Muslim, you need to get married, you need to have a wife and family and all this stuff.
Right away.
Yeah. So we started talking about it. So then I said, you know what? Well, what about Sana? And he was super happy because he knows the family and he's known her for however long, since she was a little kid. And so that was kind of our plan, is that he even took me to like Junaid's and all these like places to shop for clothes for my wedding when I come home, which was an amazing experience from a guy that like only wears like a white like shalwar kameez and turban, like that kind of like. For him to do that, it was incredible. So that was the plan when we came back, is that he would on my behalf, he would kind of propose to the family, and
as the traditional kind of way.
Yeah. Do you want to say how?
Oh, that did not go over well.
Really?
I still remember the day he came over to my family, and there was so many tears, and I bawled my eyes out, and my mom was just like, no. Like all those years, I spent a lot of years in tension and tears, and there was a lot of disconnect between, me and my mom, and my dad was all for it. He's like, I'm cool. Yeah. He's like, yeah, she can marry him. And my mom was not.
Yeah.
Not.
And so now during this whole time, for all those years you were in university, did you already have it in your mind that eventually this will happen?
Yeah, I did. No, I did. I definitely thought that we would hopefully get married. And I thought, by completing university, by him going and working on himself, that would be kind of enough for them to be like, okay, because I was a kid in the beginning, like I was 17, and so I was like, you know what, let me just mature myself a little bit, and he can mature himself a little bit, and maybe that'll be enough for them to say, yes, like it's been so many years, and your heart is still set on him, then yes. But it was a straight up no.
Yeah, so. I think the term was like, don't ever bring this up again. Yeah, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Wow, really.
Yeah. It was.
And then I know in our culture, also for girls, it can be very difficult because there's a lot of pressure to get married as fast as possible too. So did you get any of that where your mom was like, oh, you're getting rishtas or things like that, you should
I did
consider them. How did you handle that?
There was a lot of that, and there was just a lot of tears, and I just kept pushing back and saying, no, like, let me finish university. That was kind of my excuse, I guess you could say that. Yeah. I wanted to finish school, and I was like, no, not right now. And it was hard. It was really hard.
My older brother, one of my brothers, he also got married to a white, non-Muslim woman, but she had converted to Islam prior to meeting him. And even then, my dad was, just like you guys, my dad was completely open. He was very chill about it. He was like, oh, that's cool. Let's do it. And then my mom, it took 2 years to convince my mom.
Wow. What is with the moms, right?
It's a mom's.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so it sounds like a very difficult situation. Then what happened?
So what she said, absolutely no. What year was that?
That was 2013.
Yeah, okay.
So the month of Ramadan happened, and
this is where the magic happened.
And so we're at that point, right? Like I was kind of bummed out and that it didn't work out.
I just want to say, at this point, William was leading prayers in our masjid. So at this point, the masjid was built, and he was literally leading prayers for.
So you were the imam.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And there was so many people that had led the prayers over the years in that, like in our community, and they were pushing him in the front and saying, you lead the prayer.
I didn't have a choice.
Yeah, he never had a choice. And so my mom like did not even know that he had attended the masjid or that he even knew Arabic or that, and she knew nothing, right? Because it was just a straight up, he's white. No, it's not happening. She didn't know anything. And so Ramadan happened and we would go for Taraweeh.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate here for a moment, I'm sure it's not only because I was white that her mom said no, but just given the fact that she's obviously very cultured from Pakistan, and then has seen so many people here, at least where we're from, right? They kind of marry by choice or they disrespect the parents. And like, I'm doing it, and they do it, and then they end up divorced or alone, and they're 30 and they've got kids. That was more out of love, I'm sure, than it was out of me being white.
Yeah. I guess.
so just to play that card, just to stand up for her, because she's downstairs right now watching our kids. So I got to be nice, just in case she hears this, right?
There you go. Makes sense. I do want to hone into that though. Maybe Sana has some better perspective on this, where I'd like to understand what is the core issue, because again, he's already converted to Islam. He's established, right, for a few years with the religion. So then I know there's a cultural difference, but what exactly is it that can bother our parents about this type of interracial marriage?
One thing was like, he won't ever understand our language. The second thing was like, he won't eat the same food we eat. He won't dress the same as how we dress. How will you raise your kids in a different culture? Like, will he take you to his house and his parents that are not Muslim and make you live there? And it was all these like unknowns, I guess, that she was thinking of, like how is this going to work? Because like Islam wasn't, to her, she didn't quite understand how he immersed himself, because I think in her mind, it was like, oh, he became Muslim for her. And that's the only reason why. She didn't know that he had actually become Muslim like for himself, because he genuinely had changed. And she didn't know any of that. She just thought, okay, he just did it just to marry her type of thing. So
it's almost like an over-analyzing of like all of these little things, and all of these little things end up into one big thing, which is just like, no.
Straight up, no.
Seems like it.
Yeah, exactly,
right.
Yeah.
And also, I guess it might also be that it's never been done before, right, in a specific family.
Ever.
When there's a first time for something like that, it can be really scary for our relatively traditional parents.
In our entire community, every single person in that community, it'd never been done before. No one had ever married outside their culture, and everybody there had basically married their cousin.
Yeah, there you go. The safe option.
Where we lived. It's true, though.
It's
Yeah,
true.
where we lived, where we were.
Yeah, it's very common. Yeah, I know.
Very small town, like very small town. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see. So then back to the masjid story. How did you build a relationship with her mom?
Yeah, so this is the miracle about the way that Allah, you can plan, but Allah is the best of planners.
Yeah.
So it was, I had just came back from Pakistan, and we did the proposal. It did not work out. It was kind of like end of the road. I wouldn't say we kind of gave up, but it was really like, there's nothing else that we can do at this point other than like run away and get married. But I mean, that was never an option for us. We didn't, on my part, I would see destroying somebody's family as a good means of starting a relationship.
Yeah.
When Ramadan happened, it happened in the last 10 days of Ramadan. So they were coming for Taraweeh, Sana and her mom and her dad, obviously. We had a hafiz come to do the Taraweeh prayer, but I would call the adhan. And
there's
so,
a barrier, so we can't see anything. All we can do is hear
you can
the
just kind of hear. And I guess she had heard that, but she didn't know it was me. At least right away. And then in the last 10 days of Ramadan, I was making i'tikaf in the masjid, and just, I don't even know how or why, but I talked to her after, like years later, and I said, like, what was it that, like, why would you even, what happened? And she said that she was reading the Quran, and she came across verses of the Quran which talks about like not being judgmental and giving people kind of like I don't remember what it was, but to give people a chance. Don't just judge them and assume you know who they are or whatever.
from the Quran.
Yeah. And so when she found out that it was me calling the adhan, I guess she really liked it.
I think she asked my dad and said, who's the one that always calls the prayer? Because I've never heard their voice, and their voice is so beautiful. And
then from there, it became really strange, because she would then get Sana's dad to bring me food in the masjid.
to hold your fast.
Yeah, like to break my fast with us. And I was like, it was kind of odd, because he would bring it, but I think in the beginning he didn't even tell me. He was just kind of like, here, this is from our family, so you can break your fast, whatever. And then randomly like straight up randomly. I got she tucked a little note inside the biryani or whatever it was that it had, and I read this note and I was blown away because it wasn't like a.
Do you still have that note?
No, maybe I don't. It wasn't. How do I say? I don't even know how to say this. It wasn't like I'd like to get to know you and talk and stuff. It was like I would love for you to marry my daughter.
Wow, that was straight up.
The first note ever.
Yeah.
The first communication
Straight up. I was like.
Right.
Because you'd never spoken, you'd never talked on the phone, you'd never nothing.
No, and so it totally caught me by surprise, like blew me away. And then I said, well, I don't really have anything that would be of value to give to you. But so I kept a journal with me when I was in Pakistan. So I gave it to her as kind of like so she could kind of see how my time was and just to get to know me a little bit better. So I think I got it back years later, but she kept it for the longest time. So she kind of got to understand a little bit more about me, like my spiritual side. And then from there, I think, was it that Eid or was it Eid al-Adha?
No, so that first Eid we met, my mom invited you over.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and
I had the interview. The big interview was on.
The big interview. Yeah. So she had called. I guess she had actually made contact and said, like, "What's your phone number? Let's actually talk this time." So they had talked, and that's when I realized, oh my God, like my mom's talking to him. This is like I never in a million years thought that would happen. And she told me, she's like, so he's coming over for Eid, and your sisters are going to be here from Calgary, and all of us were going to have a meeting with him. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. And by the way, how long after the no was this?
I got the note in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and on Eid I was at her house.
Yeah, so. You're right.
So it was a few weeks later, maybe a month later.
Yeah, I guess so.
And it sounds like, so what made her kind of come around to considering it is seeing your commitment to the religion.
As far as I can calculate from everything, I think that's what it was, is that Allah opened her heart, and then she gave me an honest chance to kind of prove myself, even though she was just like, yep, you're the one. And I was like, what?
Like literally before even knowing what his face looked like.
Before I'd ever actually even sat down with her and had a conversation, she'd kind of already said that I'm cool with this. And then I had to sit in front of her sisters and her brother-in-laws, and they're asking me all these questions. And like, wow.
So tell us a little bit about your family, by the way, Sana. You mentioned sisters. Are you the youngest of your family?
I am, yes. I'm the youngest. My older siblings, no one had at that point lived where we lived. They had already gotten married and had kids. And they lived in Calgary, so they lived an 8-hour drive from where we were. But they would always come for Eid. They would always come for holidays. They were over all the time, and that was very interesting when we had that interview.
To say the least.
So Will came over, and then he was bombarded with questions.
Basically, like everything from like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What would
it was like a job
what would you do if you got into an argument?
Exactly, and that's like her older sister. That she's very like the analytical type, so she was asking those type of questions. And I'm like, man, I didn't prepare for this. Like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Also, let's hear a little bit about your family, Will. We didn't talk about them.
Yeah.
Was there an angle there? Were they involved, or did you kind of just do this independently?
Yeah, no. So, like, my parents and I have always been really close. Me and my siblings have never really been too close since we kind of grew up. When I became Muslim, like, I didn't tell them right away because my family, like my father especially, was very anti-religion and saw it as a bad, evil thing. And then especially it's like, it'd be bad enough if you became a Christian. Like, now, what is this? You're a what? A Muslim? So we never really had a
relationship.
Yeah, I mean, like that side of it, we didn't really talk about it. And then, like, when I did tell them that I'm Muslim, I had kind of already played it out so that they were basically like, well, duh, yeah, we know that. Just to kind of, I didn't want to be really harsh and kind of, I wanted it to be easy for them to kind of digest. So in terms of with Sana, no, it was basically all me and, this friend of mine, family friend of hers that had kind of taken me under his wing. But that being said, our wedding, my parents and my nieces came to our wedding. So the big meeting happened, the question and answer period on Eid al-Fitr. And then on the day of Arafat, we got married. So
literally just very close, like 2 months.
Yeah, we had our walima in the masjid and we did the nikah and that was it. We waited to do the whole
shebang.
Yeah.
So you were married in 2 months.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That's so crazy.
It's pretty quick, yeah.
How fast?
I got married to my wife, I think 5 months after getting engaged, and then we had just met. So about 6 months since we met.
Yeah, it was probably like that, right? Because it was a summer, and I think the next early spring we had the wedding, and my parents came and they came, like, my dad wore a jubba, which is like, my dad's a biker, right? So he got bald head, tattoos, and then he's like wearing like this Moroccan jubba. I was like, wow. So they're very supportive. They didn't, honestly, they saw it a bit differently than I did, right? They saw it like, okay, well, quit wasting your time, just move on and get on with life, basically. But obviously Allah had different plans, and so but yeah, they supported it. It was always easy on my side. It was her side that was a bit more challenging for sure.
I see.
So we did the nikah, that Eid al-Adha. We did it very, very simple. Just had some close friends and family, and then I still stayed at my parents' house, very much like other people
still
do.
Couldn't live with me
until the rukhsati. But at that point, he would come over like every day. he was part of the family.
Yeah, no, I think it was her dad or her dad said, he's like, well, why doesn't he just live here?
Yeah, he gave him a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
We slept in different rooms.
Yeah, it was the weirdest kind of thing, but
we were married, but yeah. And then literally just like 5 months later, we had like the mendi, the barat, and then the walima.
Awesome. I see. So, and then which year was that, by the way?
It was 2013 when we had the nikah.
Yeah, and then 2014 is when we had
the wedding, and then you were finally together.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, cool. So now you have 2 kids, right?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. What are some really common questions that you get? Is there a pattern among the questions?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How did you guys meet? Is he Muslim?
Yeah.
And then
tattoos are haram, brother.
Yeah, tattoos are haram.
Do you have tattoos?
I do, previously to me becoming Muslim.
I see.
Yeah, that's true. Another one that we get is, I'm in the exact same situation as you. How did your parents say yes to him?
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest that we get. Like,
that's the biggest.
Huge messages, literally every single day.
That's why we made that YouTube video, is because we get asked that all the time, and so we just direct them there. And it just kind of explains, right, like how the whole thing went. And
yeah. Do you get a lot of questions that are like, "Oh, he hasn't converted yet," or "She hasn't converted yet"? How should I approach this?
Yeah, it's also one of the bigger ones, is that I'm in a relationship with so and so, and they're not Muslim yet, but they want to learn. And
what do I do?
What do we do? How can we kind of proceed? What should we do? And so it puts us in kind of a precarious situation, because we're not scholars. I mean, I spent the last 10 years of my life kind of spending time with scholars and learning as much as I can. But I know enough to know that it's a very touchy subject. But it's also one that I think a lot of people are not willing to go to the imam because they don't understand. They're not willing to go to their family because it may be a cultural situation, kind of like what we dealt with, that they don't understand, or that they don't want to just kind of think that there's no hope that this could ever work for them. So they look at us and they're like, well, you guys, you seem to make it work. What do we do? How do we do it? Right. So,
and these are messages from everywhere, all over around the world. Like, all around the world, places I would never even think that this is happening. So, and even people that aren't in relationships and are just pondering Islam, there's a lot of those people that have been messaging us too, like, hey, like, I've, like, you are a revert, and, how does that work? I've just been exposed to Islam for the first time after watching your TikTok videos. Like, tell me more. It's kind of a big spot to be in, because it's like people expect a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? You don't realize that this much is happening across the world. Because day to day, you meet people outside, on the street, at school, at work. You don't really hear their stories like that. You just hear them, how's the weather? You just have small talk.
Yeah.
But you don't really discuss like these types of situations. But now that you're on a platform and you're kind of at the center of it, right? It's amazing how many stories open up and how many people are willing to open up to you.
Yeah.
And so much that people expect, I guess, sometimes from you by having a platform. They expect that wisdom out of you. Like you can answer all their questions or frustrations. It's very interesting. I ask Will and Sana what it's like to be in an interracial marriage and how they mix and blend into each other's cultures and families.
It's interesting because, like she said, that a lot of the things that her mom kind of perceived to be an issue along the way, whether it be language, culture, that sort of stuff. It's one of those things, right? Like, if you really care, like, in terms of like an intercultural type relationship, you've got to understand that there's a lot of differences on both sides. And it was, I don't know if it was just the luck of the draw, or obviously that Allah's plan is that way, that I went to Pakistan, and our community in back home was Pakistani, and the Jamaats where I would go, 3 days here, 3 days there.
So familiar,
I
he'd eat nothing but
right from the beginning that I had no problem experiencing.
Chai. He drinks chai 3 times a day. I don't even drink chai. I don't even drink chai. He's straight up mixed.
So spending so much time with Pakistanis, and then having gone to Pakistan, I was in Pakistan for 80 days, and in that time, there's so much culture and so you learn so much. And we would have this one thing we would do where they would say, okay, you have to go and give dawah, like preach to somebody 25 times before you go to sleep tonight.
Wow.
And that was in Riven. So you've got, I think, 30 or 40,000 people that circulate in and out of that place all the time.
Yeah.
And so at half the time it would be someone just sit down, whether they're speaking in Pashto or Urdu or whatever, and they would just give dawah. They would just preach to me, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, okay. So the more exposure I had to it, the more understanding of the language. So I don't speak Urdu. But
he understands.
I understand.
I can have like a full conversation with my mom, and he'll be like, "Oh, so that's what happened," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like how he understands.
You mean you need to make the effort, right? That I was lucky that I was exposed to it. For people that aren't that lucky, if you want to make it work, especially in terms of someone else's parents, whether it be the husband or the wife and their culture. It was obviously my side. Sana was born and raised in Canada, so there was no real culture. She grew up and went to school, and just like everybody else did, so there wasn't any culture issue on that side. It was certainly only her side. But the understanding that her mom can feel comfortable that on Eid we dress up half the time usually, that we're all wearing traditional Pakistani clothing, or I'll wear a jubba or whatever. And the food, we all eat the same food, and for the most part. And then language, same kind of thing. And I understand the culture. So you really need to make an effort to understand each other's culture, because that makes, honestly, that was one of the easiest transitions that we had, which was the biggest speed bumps for her mom in the beginning. Was like, oh, wow. So everything about, what we are. And that sort of stuff.
Had you not gone to Pakistan, it would have been a way different story.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's true. Yeah, just going to Pakistan kind of helped you bridge a better connection, right? Not just to the religion, but to the culture as well. So you had a better shot.
Absolutely. It seemed to work out all right.
Yeah. Do you guys plan to go to Pakistan at some point in the future together?
She says, Sana says no. And her mom says, okay, so you guys, when are you going to go and get your green cards? Like, come on, like tomorrow? Like she literally said that to me last week. She's like, so we can go tomorrow then, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we don't have any immediate plans. I would certainly like to go.
I just worry. I don't know. The whole Corona thing.
Oh yeah, of course not any time in the next year. Yeah, probably.
We'll leave that out of the equation for the conversation.
Yeah.
I would like to, just because there's a lot of things like when I was there that it wasn't really like a touristy thing. I would love to go to like Sawat and Kashmir up in the north and just see kind of how gorgeous the country really is.
I've literally never gone sightseeing.
Yeah.
When I went to Pakistan, so when they formed, or when they asked you like where would you like to go, like in the Jamaat, I told them I was like, I want to go to Waziristan and Sawat, and they're like, nope, not happening. Yeah. So even on my visa, it said like there's areas where if you go, like we're not helping you, like you're on your own. So it was travel restrictions and stuff. So I think things have changed a lot. That was that was quite a while ago.
Yeah, a long time.
I think things have changed, and honestly, I know there's a lot of issues obviously with India and Kashmir and everything going on right now. But it's the culture. It's the people are so, at least in my experience, I can only speak for myself, but they're so sweet and so so humble. And I spent some time with some brothers. They're from Lucky Madawat, which is it's in the NWFP. Someone doesn't know what I'm talking about here.
No idea.
So they're from the mountains, right? And I was thinking, these guys they're like hard, tough people. But they were like the sweetest people I'd ever met in my life. Like they would sit you down and just give you a head massage, just because they're Pathans, right? And I'm thinking these guys are unbelievable. And they were out for a year on foot all over Pakistan. But just everywhere that we went, the people were so sweet and they were so kind, and I never had any issues at all in terms of feeling unsafe, or other people did. Like the brother I was with, he's like, okay, so we were in Hyderabad, and I think there was a bombing that took place, And he's like, okay, so you're not going anywhere. You're staying here. You're not going out. And so it was very much more like me. I was like, I don't care, whatever. But in terms of the country itself, and I think, honestly, I think it's nice to see that people are starting to see it for what it is, not for what kind of the outside world kind of demonizes it to be.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted, I think, by the coverage that certain incidents get versus the day-to-day life that you're actually experiencing right over there, or anywhere, to be honest, with the people that you'll meet. Your interactions with them won't get written down in a newspaper and come on headlines like, man gives another man a scalp massage.
Yeah, exactly.
Just out of the kindness of his heart. That's not going to become a news story. But it's important to make sure that you understand the scale of certain issues, because they're coming on the news for a reason, but they can easily cloud your judgment. And it's great you understand that, Will.
Yeah,
definitely.
One last question. Your last name, Saleh, was that part of the name that you inherited, Will, when you converted?
So the first name was because of Dr. Qasim from South Africa. I had no choice just because everybody knew me as Muhammad Williams. So, and then I decided, because that, honestly, with my parents, the conversion part wasn't a big deal, but the name changing was huge.
That was the thing that upset them the most.
Yeah, so that, like, I'm the last of my family lineage essentially, so it's my responsibility to carry on my family name. So even though like my name's been changed, it was changed like 1,000 years ago or whatever, and that didn't matter, so that was a big deal. So I kept William because I felt like, my last name is just inherited. It's just something that you're stuck with. You don't have a choice. But the name William is what my parents chose for me, even though they called me Billy my entire life, which is somehow short for William, I guess. So I went with Muhammad William to keep that out of respect for my parents. And then Saleh, honestly, I like the name. That was my choice. So it was Dr. Qasim's choice for the first one, for my parents for the second, and then the last name was my choice. And I chose that obviously because of the meaning, right? It kind of... It exemplified everything that my parents wanted me to be, or with their kids to be, which was to be righteous, whether you're religious or not. To be upright, to be as pious as you could be in terms of being a good human being, and so it was kind of an out of respect for them. One that I like the name, I love the name, and what really hit me was when our daughter was born, our first daughter Amina. It was like Amina Muhammad is what I think it was, or baby Muhammad is what it was.
My name.
So that was her name, and
my maiden name.
And I was like, we're never gonna have the same name or the same kind of, at least with like the white culture, it's like you get married, you become the same last name.
You hadn't changed your name prior to our baby.
Yeah. So when my daughter was born, I really kind of just decided, like, I want us to kind of all have the same family name, and now alhamdulillah we're all just the Saleh family.
Yeah. Right. Now we're the Saleh family.
Fantastic. Yeah. I know, Sana, you kind of mentioned after you had your kids, you started your own business / brand, right? You have a presence on YouTube, TikTok. Well, tell us a little bit about your brand, I guess, and then what got you into that.
I have no idea. It kind of happened. I was far from being public on social media when I first started. I was a makeup artist also, and I would post pictures of other people and never myself. And then I started doing my business, and I realized that people responded better to purchasing products when I would show my own face using the products. So that's when I started establishing my brand a little bit more. And believe it or not, we didn't start doing TikTok until February of this year. And we've grown to almost 250,000 followers in literally 5 months. And that has in turn expanded my YouTube, my Instagram, our everything. Like our platforms have just become huge. And William is not a social media person. Like he didn't friend me on Facebook until like, I don't even know.
Like 10 years after we met.
Yeah. Like he just doesn't use social media. So for him to just all of a sudden have millions of views on TikTok, it's just like kind of a big deal for him. So yeah. And now that we just love doing it. We love creating content. And we noticed that when we first started, like we noticed people loved the mixed culture. Like that was like the biggest thing, was like people would message us and still do every single day asking for advice because they're in similar situations as us. So.
You can find the links to follow Sana and Will on TikTok and Instagram on our episode's description. If you have any questions, feel free to message them directly. And if you have any comments and feedback about this episode or this podcast, feel free to email us at hello@popcord.com or DM us on Instagram @popcord. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Well, again, thanks so much for doing this.
No, anytime. We're happy to do it. It's been fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks so much, man.
Jazakallah. Take care.